A lot of the shows typically after the fact, like in the morning, 'cause I'm 6 hours ahead of you. But I've enjoyed them all, and I like the. I mean, you're in a basement in the dark, and
I am. You're right.
it's kind of like sitting with your stone buddy in a club having a conversation. And I think that's really funny. Not that you behaved like you were stoned, but you get what I mean. It's a casual vibe.
I was
It's
thinking you're
not
not that
like
far off. It's actually it's wildly accurate, your description. I think I don't know if I would have actually phrased it that way myself, but it seems to be like it's right on.
yeah. You can leave that part to your guests. They can say all the inappropriate stuff.
That's, you know what, you're not wrong. You're right there as well. And there's been obviously episodes where I'm hanging out with somebody and a discussion will take place, and maybe an opinion or an idea will be said on their end that I don't agree with, but I don't want to interrupt somebody, and I certainly I don't want someone to think that I have all the answers. I don't. I think one of the coolest parts
Nobody
about
does.
no way, no way.
That's
That's
what we're
right.
all looking for, man. That's what we spend our whole life doing.
The answer. Well, I think I
Yeah,
might be
sometimes
spending.
even the question.
Sure, exactly. I think I might be spending my time trying to find the answer to raving. And I don't know. Obviously, like anything else, it's weird. My ultimate reset was that I feel like I've come back to Toronto. I've got guests that are international that have come on because they've been in Toronto, or they've played somehow a role in my story, and I feel that because there is that attachment, even if it's not super unified, that still there's an attachment to me that I'm able to go off and have that come my way.
Yep.
I'm able to get all these different stories, and afterwards, because here's also something, I'm all over the place with you, Mike. That's how excited I am right now. I'm in a place where I'm not watching the episodes. When I first started doing Utility Room and it was just music, I was watching all of my episodes, and I was using them I was using them at the gym as well to exercise. It was in playback, and then when I started doing the interviews, I stopped doing that because I was too concerned that I was saying. I wasn't worried about what my guests were saying. I'm in my own head. Did I say the right thing?
Yeah.
Did I go the right direction? Did my voice squeak in a weird way right there? Oh, what was I doing? Um, and I don't want to have those thoughts where I feel like I'm going to go through with it. This is my idea. I'm going to go through with it. I'm going to be able to talk to everybody, or as much as I can, just and get everybody's story, and understand that each story has its own form of awesomeness. Especially when it's not my story, so I'm able to go ahead and get these people to tell what their end is. And I talk to everybody before the show begins. I actually, because I mean, we're recording right now. I've not said this, but I typically say, behind the scenes, the BTSs, before we begin, is there anything that you don't want to discuss? Is there
Right.
a topic that might be uncomfortable? I've gotten so quick to get our episode started here. I was going to be late. A further digression is I've got a bit of a 15-minute rule. If I'm going to go and get together with somebody, and within 15 minutes of our time of getting together, they're not there, I'm showing heels. All right,
That's
unless
fair.
if you message me in the middle of that and be, hey, I'm caught in traffic, the tire fell off my car, I've stubbed my toe and it's fallen off, I'm en route to the hospital. All that stuff is good to go, and we're fine, and I'm happy you messaged me, and then it gives me time to recalibrate my own life and go off somewhere. But if I'm going to get together with somebody and they're not there, they haven't even messaged me in 15 minutes, I'm showing heels. I'm up and out of there. So I was trying to race what was happening with us, where we were like, yeah, oh shoot, I told you at a specific time I couldn't do that time, and so I'm like, I told him I gotta make a coffee. The water's taking extraordinarily long to boil right now.
You guys are on 120, like 120 volt. It takes longer.
Is
Everything
that
takes
is
longer.
that what it is? Is because
Yeah,
we're on
totally.
120 volt? So this is a great time, just by saying that, to say, uh, welcome to Utility Room. That is Michael
Thanks.
Stein, who I am so stoked to have with us tonight. Michael Stein, by my own accounts, is one of the original after-hours rave-style promoters in Toronto, and ended up throwing some of the earlier, bigger events in the mid-'90s, upwards to 2000, and was one of the guys that was behind Pleasure Force. I'm saying guys because I'm not sure who else was involved, and that's an opportunity for me to ask, who was Pleasure Force?
Well, I mean, that's first of all, we'll if we talk about that story, it's an interesting one because prior to Pleasure Force, in Toronto, doing my thing, I was working at Sam the Record Man, finishing off my undergrad at U of T, working at Sam's, met DJ Ian, and in fact, that might be another story. He kind of dragged me in. I was the CD single buyer at Sam the Record Man, buying like post-punk and early Manchester kind of CD singles for sale, and we became friends. And I joined him on the Nitrous project, Nitrous 012. And so I was partnered up with Ian and Don and Claudio and Marty and team and James Kikanovich for the first Nitrous 012. And why that's important is because from that standpoint, I also started getting involved in licensing music shortly thereafter. My involvement with that kind of caught the attention of some people at Sony and a small company called SPG Music. And these guys said, hey, this is cool. You're involved in some interesting stuff. I already knew them through the record shop. And they said, hey, would you like to license some music? And I said, yeah, that'd be great. And I'm planning on moving to the UK. And so in just shortly after May 1992, I got on a plane, finished my degree, flew out to the UK, and started licensing music for SPG Music for a set of CDs called Too Technical. They were like
Hold on
early.
for a second. Hold on. You left
Yeah.
Toronto. You left Toronto. You're on an airplane. You're now in the UK. You're living there.
Yeah.
You know nobody.
I don't know nobody.
You're starting entirely fresh, and you're doing this because you want the gig.
Absolutely. I wanted to be able to, because I'd already been very interested in the buying of music and selling of new singles and new sounds and everything else. Really excited by that. Again, it was around that was 1990, 1991. And then 92 came along, did this party, ended up synchronizing through working at Sam the Record Man with a couple of guys, like I said, the label owners. They were getting a distro deal through Sony and said, hey, we want to put out these CDs showcasing techno. Well, at the time, there was only one other person putting out CDs showcasing techno. You know who that was? Chris Shepard. And so he was doing a techno trip. These guys came along and said, we want to do this other techno compilation. Are you willing to do it? And so put it together and did that project. And then while I was in the UK, was continuing to license music. And so in my time there, I traveled over there with my, at the time, girlfriend. And we were just living there. And I was out there licensing music, meeting people like NRG, Goldie, DJ Fantasy, John the Dentist, all of these people that kind of became Toronto early mainstays. And found a connection to the Toronto scene. Some more than others in the long run, but all these guys came together on this compilation. And about halfway through my stay there, we'll call it like say around August, I got a phone call from Johnny, who I had really connected with back at the first Nitrous 012 party, which, as I said before, I was involved with. And became, acquainted with him there. And he's like, hey, Stein, Peter the Greek and I are coming out to the UK. We want to hang out. And I was like, well, okay, that sounds good. And I'm going to this seminar in Manchester called In the City. And it was actually quite a short-lived seminar. It was all general music conference kind of stuff. And being at that time doing the licensing stuff, it was just appropriate. And so they arrived. We all met in Manchester, and Chris Shepherd shows up there at the same time. We all meet there for the first time, all of us together in this space, and enjoy this amazing event. Got to actually have beers, the New Order, go to the Hacienda, be a part of this event, and really kind of, met Johnny and Peter the Greek, who I'd met before during the other party, had some great times. And at the end of this journey, and by the way, I think I posted not too long ago on Facebook pictures of Peter the Greek on the horse at Buckingham Palace. And so we spent some time together back in London. And then at the end, came this question. It's like, hey, Greek and I did this party, before we left back in Toronto. We did a jam called Pleasure Force. There's this guy named Alan that's involved with it, and interested. Would you be interested in doing something with the music stuff you're doing? And I said, yeah. Well, listen, this sounds interesting. Why don't I come back and bring back some of the bands that I've been licensing the music for? And let's put a party together, and maybe we can get the label to pitch in. And I don't know what it'll look like, but I had also been involved with tons of raves in the UK.
Okay.
And at that time, XL Party and a few other events that had been going on there that I really got inspired by. Of course, London drum and bass clubs, and at the time, I guess you call them jungle nights and whatnot, having been catered and kind of been guided there through by guys like DJ Fantasy and a whole other host of other people that were so generous in their dragging me around to their amazing events and their amazing gigs. And anyway, so having built that knowledge, having done the licensing stuff, I said, let's do a party, and let's bring in some interesting people to this event. And that included DJ Fantasy, Goldie and team for Roughage Crew, doing their basically the Roughage Crew kind of construct, and that was Looney Tunes, and along with NRG also, and that was the basis, the basis of the first event with Pleasure Force. And at that time it was my obviously Johnny, Greek, myself, and Alan that were currently involved. I think before I was involved, there might have been the event at RPM, which was the first gig that was done. Again, I wasn't involved with that one, but I kind of feel like John Angus was involved with that, or the Exodus guys had some part in that one, bringing had a specific band there, and I can't remember the name, but there was an event before I was part of it, and that was at RPM sometime in mid '92, and November '92 was Looney Tunes, and that was the first party I was involved in. And from that point on, there were others involved, and Dave Bragg joined later on.
I need to jump in. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah.
Now back.
Interject anytime.
Thank you. Sorry, apologies, but I'm in. I wanna
Not at all.
You're back in Toronto now, full time.
So I came back for that specific party. And
are you still doing stuff with SPG remotely, like satellite in Toronto, or have you left SPG in the UK behind?
They were in Toronto. Yeah, after the Looney Tunes gig, which was also roughly the release party for that second album, the Too Technical, then I decided to come back. So I went back to the UK briefly after that, and then came home, I think maybe that was November. So maybe December, early January of '93, I was back permanently in Toronto.
I'm wondering, this first event that you got involved in, it sounded like there's a lot of people. Was there a point during this project management to birth it? Was there a point where it felt like there was too many cooks in the kitchen?
Oh man, no. You know what? It was pretty interesting because it was completely it was completely new. The scale to which we were doing this was a little bit different. And the first party I had done back with Nitrous, we found my one of my college buddies had found the space, and we had kind of reworked the space with Don Burns, rest in peace, and a bunch of other people, Claudio and Ian. There's a collaborative effort to clear out this space and do a party in it. Although fundamentally, it really, structurally wise and space wise, was still feeling more like a warehouse jam. And of course, we'd all known what warehouse parties were, and it still felt constructed and presented in a fundamental way that was more like a party in a warehouse. And it wasn't, at that point, the word, oh, it's a rave, wasn't really stuck in my head. But when I came back from the UK, there was a very different vision in my head. And I think at that point, our partners, like, so you asked the question about too many cooks. I think Alan at that time had already a vision of what was in his head. He has already connected with that UK style rave. And Johnny and Greek had definitely had a touch of that when they came over and had experienced it in some other ways. And I had spent close to a year just diving into that culture and just being exposed to it, so that when it came time to do the show in November 1992, Looney Tunes, there was a completely different vision of what that space should look like, what the stage structure should look like, how the position of really the sound, the audience, the scale of the lights, the scale of the sound, the visual impact for me, for at least for me, became really, really important. And I think at that stage, we all had a pretty common understanding about where we wanted to go, because we saw that vision of what it could be to have a lot of people in a room. And by the way, at that party, we was close to 2,000 people. So our biggest party was 5.
Pleasure Force 94, 95?
Yeah, 94, 95, New Year's Eve. There was 5,000 people there, maybe
Easily.
hair above. It was packed, but this first party had a pretty good number of people at it. And like most of our parties, we made no money. There was a handful of parties we actually pulled it off. But the one thing that is consistent is that we really typically spent more money than we should have throwing the event. And we were terrible with budgeting. And
was everyone just excited? Were you guys in a place where you're like, we need a little bit more of this, we need a little bit more of that? I mean, also, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you're off in the UK, and sure, you're getting brought out to different shows so you can have exposure. But what did you know about renting a sound system or staging lights? Were you leaning on the production people? You're like, I'm okay to rent this stuff. I don't really know what we need. I'm just saying, because it's kind of like,
yep, good question.
Okay.
Yep. We absolutely we leaned on Westbury sound very early in the game. We also got Shakedown, Myron. We had kind of a trifecta of sound people. So George, Westbury, and Myron, depending on the scale of the event. And did we know how to do that at the beginning? No, I think probably Johnny and Greek might have been familiar with it, throwing, I don't know, whatever the Scarborough jams that they threw in like high school. So they kind of knew the right people that could rent some stuff. But the scale at which we wanted to do it here with lasers and floating video screens and stuff like that were completely out of our, let's say, our scope at the time. Out of our, we had it in our imagination, but we didn't really know what it would take to put it on, especially in a space that was raw, not really set up for it. But the one thing we did right at that point was we chose big warehouse spaces. This really was a good choice, whether it was intentional or not. It felt like the right choice because it was big, and we wanted people to feel like they're in a place that's special, different. It's not in the club. And it's also not like a classic warehouse vibe, which had a very special, beautiful energy all in its own. But we wanted it to be a little bit more in your face, a little bit, a warehouse party was dark, might have had a strobe, was moody, was sexy. We weren't looking for that. We were looking for something that would kind of blow your socks off and bring brand new sounds, at least new to Toronto at the time, into the space and really excite people. And, you know, I think going back to your original question, were there too many cooks? No. I think at that point we were definitely all in the same kind of direction. And I think we really enjoyed putting that together um, in the haphazard kind of maniacal way that we did at the time, which was in some cases trial and error. Um, but for that first jam at Looney Tunes, November '92, it really worked. It really set the pace for us, and I think really set a good standard for what that new shift would be. Out of the smaller spaces, out of the clubs, um, kind of turning it the paradigm a bit more to bigger scale, not huge scale. The parties got absolutely much bigger elsewhere, but still being able to enjoy the illegal and completely outrageous spaces that were available at that time, where the authorities, the fire department, nobody had any clue. Like they were like, why would anyone want to be in those spaces? And that was pretty special. So we had this, I guess they would call it a hall pass. Who knew how long that hall pass would last? It's definitely a finite period of time.
Oh, it's
But
over.
we had that hall pass for a few precious years. And it was really fun and kind of inspiring to be able to play with that almost unlimited palette of ideas that you could engage in those spaces. And that was
I'm
super fun.
I'm curious. I want to rewind just a little bit. So this is a
Of course.
what an awesome story, and it just sounds beautifully organic, which is always my favorite. I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this the right way. I mean, what was the spark that ignited so that I'm asking as if you might have an awareness. Actually, I'm mostly curious about your opinion, which is what do you believe might be the spark that caused the awareness for SPG to want to go and create compilations for techno? Because you said there was only one
Yeah,
other. And you're speaking about Canada. You're not speaking about globally. I mean,
of
globally,
course,
there's
of
there's
course.
there's there's just stuff that's happening. Real quick, there used to be a music store on McCall Street downtown that sold CDs. They were called Penguin Music. I,
Yeah, I
I
remember those guys.
I'm not sure who operated the store, but the people team that was behind Penguin Music had imports from everywhere that were 35 at that time. This is 1995, 1998. I'm guessing 35, $40 Canadian plus tax for what
Obscene.
for one CD, which was absolutely obscene back then. That's the equivalent of someone telling you you're buying an album for $100.
That's a
Yes,
lot of money.
it's a lot of money, but if you're a super fan, it's a yes. If you're a medium fan, you're looking at this and you're going, I want to, but and I had a lot of uh I want to but moments because I was going into the record store, Penguin specifically, and not knowing what half of these things were. I was very much judge a book by its cover, like, oh, the artwork is cool, and I feel that looks kind of metal. I think I'm gonna like it. I'll grab it and I'll experiment, and it was a super Vegas moment with the $40, yeah, at that point. But I'm assuming that there was an interest that was happening, and if the interest was happening, how was it only Chris Shepard that was doing pirate radio compilations, and I think he did a couple of dog whistle CDs as well. And
Yeah.
I mean, did you know by going into this where there was a feel? I'm asking to another question on top of the question. Did you know that it was gonna go this way? Did you think to yourself way back when you're getting on the plane, you're zooming off to the UK, you're like, This music's going to be around the world. It's going to be absolutely massive. Whole world's going to be dancing to it. Doesn't matter the age, and it's gonna stick around. It's not going to die. I mean, how many times over they've been in between 1995 and even now during the pandemic? Dance music is dead. Electronic music is finished. There's no dance floors anymore. Let's listen to something else. And it's like, no. And so
Yeah,
it's still here.
there's probably more music happening now. I mean, nostalgia's there for lots of people, and we're here because of nostalgia. We're talking because of some history, but never has there been a time where there's as much great music coming out. I mean, artists are drilling down, they're diving into good music, and that's absolutely incredible. Um, I'm constantly discovering new music, and there's so many people now that we're in the age of truly democratized music production tools. You can produce on almost anything. The limit is now your imagination, not your wallet. And this is a very special time for everyone to be there. I mean, my kids are both involved in producing videos and and creative components on the basic tools that they can afford today. Of course, they got a couple of added bonuses from dad, maybe a couple of pieces of advice, but they have the basic tools that they need to create a small keyboards and an iPhone or an iPad or a laptop. I mean, a laptop today is just like a powerhouse. You can produce what you want. You can create music that would have been mind-bogglingly unachievable in the early 90s or late 80s and whatnot.
True, go
Um,
back 20 years and someone would look at you and be
yeah,
like, no way. You just imagine that expression would be like,
it's just incredible. I mean, going back
right.
to your question, why did SBG want to produce those CDs? One,
Sure.
I think they just thought, hey, something's picking up here. They were also looking at compilations coming out of Europe, like from XYZ and some of the German labels. And there's lots of techno that had already been released as compilations worldwide, especially in Europe. There were big labels coming out, obviously in the US, as well as Germany. Compilations were there. There were some big songs that had come out in the probably the year preceding them wanting to create these compilations, which probably also drove Quality Records to back Shep's stuff. Um, and one of those was like Apotheosis O Fortuna, which I had licensed for this specific first CD, and a number of other tracks, Roughneck, a lot of Rising High stuff, and some early jungle and drum and bass stuff that kind of got rolled into this compilation. Some of it, in retrospect, was shit. Most of it was pretty good though, and what it was it became a catalyst. It sold well. It did pretty good. It did pretty well, and really inspired, along with the release of further Quality Records compilations, a bit of a snowball effect. And the sales for all of these things were starting to really pick up. And that for guys just doing compilations, Quality Records, they like, I mean, think of Quality. They were like selling mops and like garbage cans, and now they were selling music and compilations at platinum levels. The compilations I was working on with SPG, of course, didn't achieve that level of success, but it didn't really matter. There was already like an energy that was happening around this form of music that, by the way, had no radio play.
Well, that's just it. This is what I'm trying to, I guess, get to.
This is like setting the groundwork. Why would anyone want to do something that had no radio play?
So
And
this is how do you discover, how is the vibe being shared? What do you recall? I recall 1997 walking down Queen Street West in between John and Spadina. And even though all the stores didn't have the music that were playing it, I remember being there and feeling it. I remember feeling like that music was changing, and that if I looked at someone and said, I went to rave, even if they weren't into it, that they had an idea of what that music might be. So I just
absolutely.
I remember just it was in the air. And so the stories that you're talking about are almost a generation prior to this time that I'm remarking about. It's a half decade, and so this half decade, prior, I think also, if I'm recalling, What an incredible, interesting, crazy job that might have been to be behind the scenes working on techno music and having to defeat the stigmatization that was associated with it. And I'm not remarking about with my opinion about the stuff that comes with music, the extracurricular stuff, whatever that might be. I'm just talking about
Right.
just the music itself, which I felt was a hurdle that had to get jumped when I was out there, because I would say, I mean, I just remember at one point where everything was just techno. So I would say techno, and that would be met with, like a screw face there. Techno.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like, what's that?
All right. Not where today it's like you can say it. I'm not quite sure if it's amongst the biggest chin scratchers in the world, but then again,
People are
it's
aware of it. People are
it
aware of it. People know a history behind it, and whether that's kind of a mystery or they're abstracted from it, people can certainly see the pedigree of where it came from today, and whether they're scenesters or deep down into the music today, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't take much to look at the amazing history of the roots of this music from whether it's Germany or the UK or Detroit or New York City or Chicago and all the great places where electronic music really kind of erupted, and turned into a global thing. What was interesting about those compilations were that for me, they were the gateway to bringing in talent from the, and this was a good thing and a bad thing all at the same time, bringing in talent from outside of Toronto into Toronto. And this was, again, I say a good thing and a bad thing, because with Pleasure Force, we always brought in, that out of town. And this was a fundamental component of every party and the expectations around the out of towner, the headliner, which on one hand was cool to have new sounds coming in from other parts of the world, but on the other hand, many years later, kind of became, when we had so much talent in Toronto and so much, including yourself, amazing DJs and musicians, there was an expectation, even with that robust pool of talent, that people were like, if the lineup didn't have that special out of towner, that it might not be so special. But I think without that kind of novelty and external talent that you had from other countries, I don't know if it would have combusted in the same way as if we had just tried to brew a local scene spirit, just like, let's say, a warehouse party. I think there was an interesting blend of the new sounds, the exotic, in illegal spaces that lit a flame. And it was something so special and unusual that people were attracted to it. It was like having something land as like a spaceship landing in your city, and people would come and enjoy it and check out the aliens that were showing up, and of course, along with all the other incredibly novel components of rave culture at that time, the clothing, the party favors, the energy, the after parties, I mean, think about that. Who's doing after parties anymore? And some of those were just absurdly ridiculous. Um, and the kind of collective community that was built around that, and the constant communication of people from everything from either music fans all the way to people who had their favorite company or their favorite DJs or their favorite scene or their favorite vibe or their whatever. There were multiple communities that kind of built out of that overall um, movement. And I still consider it a movement because it was so rapid, it was so large, and it had a different approach to entertainment. And the the thoughts around it being political, I think, were interesting. And I think to a certain degree, what was political about it was that people celebrated the freedom of being able to do what they want and party at the hours that they wanted and when they wanted and how they wanted. And that was very special. And in a city like Toronto, which is often it's pretty controlling. It's a conservative city in many ways. And you see that by the authorities and just fiscal conservatism and everything else. This was a great breakout for so many people. And this is where I think that energy kind of set off that cataclysm of music and frenetic community in order to spark something a little bit different than had been seen before. Maybe something that hadn't been seen since punk. I think it was pretty special.
Wild. That was fantastic, Mike. I'm wrapped. Yeah, I was like, in fact, I felt like the story was closing. I'm like, no shit, don't stop. Like, you know what? I find that firstly, we're listening to music, techno. It's half the word of technology. This music, electronic music, had the advantage that other genres didn't have, which is that I feel that at the same time that electronic music started getting popular, in North America, I know that there was leaps, other places geographically prior to North America, but North America and techno music happened with the rise of the internet, and
Yep.
this was music that was made on a computer by people who were nerds and geeks, and were now able to share their music on their computer. Let's go way back, so it'd take you the day to download the song, but you get it. And it was easy to take your music of wherever you were geographically, because now, if you were a nerd in Australia, you were able to communicate with a nerd in Toronto real fast, real easy, certainly a lot faster and easier than it ever was before. And as soon as file sharing happened, I feel that this was really the explosion of the music. And I'm not a big believer in coincidence. But if we were to look back at the timing of this, I find that it matches. The message itself, any message right now, especially today, is shared within a second. It's a blink of an eye, and the message is shared. It was a little slower back in the late 90s and the mid 90s, but still, it was a faster message.
We had a mailing list. We had a mailing list.
An email mailing list.
Yeah, an email
which today
mailing
is
list.
Still one of the most powerful tools to communicate with, no matter what business you're in, because you think to yourself, you've gathered this data, you're communicating people directly. Earlier in the show, I was giving an opinion towards the social media. We used Facebook as an example, and that I have some frustration that only 1% of my audience is seeing my post unless I pay. It seems like when I boost a post, and I'm assuming that the metrics are going to line up, right, that I'm seeing the traction off of the boosted post. You couldn't boost posts back in the mid 90s, and your tools for promotion were what? What were you guys doing? How would you let Toronto know that you were doing a Pleasure Force party?
Well, it was really multi-dimensional, multi-platform at that time. So I think one of the biggest things that was there was, number one, being out there. So going out and meeting people. It sounds crazy, but just going out and representing yourself and participating in other people's events and celebrating other, let's say, DJ sets, and just being out was one. So being there. And this still applies today. The most successful artists, most successful people are out there. You have to be out there. You can use social media, everything else, but if you want to be part of a scene, you got to be there. And that was really important. And the great thing is we had lots of other venues other than big raves and parties where you could be a part of that scene too. Like, so small events and, Catch 22 and Oz and all these clubs that were kind of ancillary places that you could go to meet all of your, let's say, rave scene people on the off nights. These were vacation days. Like these were your relaxing days when you went home at 11 or 12 or 1, and that these are warm up days. So being out there, meeting the great people that we had in that scene is, I speak specifically about Toronto. So that's one. Obviously, at that time, we also had crazy stuff like trying to maintain an email, not an email, but a real postal mailing list. So I think at one point we had maybe 1,000 people on a real mailing list, and we would literally print it out of my printer with like shitty labels that would fuck up the printer all the time. Stick them on, licking stamps. I think Dave Bragg at one point almost threw up licking stamps, trying to get the mailing list out in time for let's say like a party near Christmas or whatever. And so that was an effort, all hand done. Flyers, of course. This in itself, for me, was fascinating because in the early stream of things, not only did we build a culture around distributing flyers and having those go out to universities, and then not too long, it was going out to high schools, and people that were distributing them to all over the place. People would just pick up flyers in batches, register, they took 500 and disappear with them. And this process of distributing the flyers was great, but what was most important was that word of mouth. Was the word of mouth that people wanted to be a part of these events. They wanted to enjoy it. They wanted to be a part of it. And a lot of those people that were flyering for those early parties that we threw eventually became leaders of the scene. And without naming names, these people developed much larger scale events and really turned that industry from warehouse raves into probably festival level stuff, right? So this was the birthplace of the so where we were able in a couple of years just to come up with some crazy harebrained schemes, warehouse parties and an aesthetic, both an audio kind of approach as well as a visual. This provided an inspiration for people to do much bigger and to take it to the next level. And this is really, really exciting when you have that kind of an energy that can just keep the ball rolling to build that iterative approach to improving something that had been started at some point by someone somewhere and just making it better. Now, in the long run, were the bigger events and the more grand events better all the way through? I think that's subjective. I think some people.
I gotta jump in. I'm sorry. I'm doing it again. When you guys were doing this, was your mind towards the underground? Were you thinking to yourself, oh shit, let's get 10,000 people at this? Were you like, you know what? There's a threshold to where this is going to become like. Were you concerned about the cool factor, or were you just like, I want to expose the whole city to this music? Toronto, turn up.
No, because it was a bit of a struggle. Yeah, of course, we always struggled with my ridiculous production budget. So it was always like, fuck, we got to get more people to break even on this stuff. And we really struggled against that. There was even more crazy venues. We were out of the city. We were doing Honey Pot with Delight and just, events.
Mighty party.
Events like that were just like, what? Like you're doing what with who? And those kind of events became very, very difficult. So the concept of the 10,000, I think we would have loved to have had 10,000 people at a party. There's no doubt. Did we have the really solid fundamental business discipline to execute on that? And also, we also wanted to maintain these crazy spaces. And we didn't. I don't think we had that savvy to really drive it in that direction in the way. So to talk about, do we want to keep it underground? Well, we didn't want to keep it that underground. We wanted lots of people there. But did we have the savvy to say, how are we going to put this into the Better Living Center? How are we going to get this into a stadium? I don't think we ever really talked about that. We had, I think there was some nights on the couch imagining things where, oh yeah, we want to take the idea on tour, and we had something very unique to present, maybe on a larger scale. But from that perspective, there was never those numbers of 10,000. I don't think we thought that big. I think we wanted big enough, but with cool spaces. And that's kind of where we drew the line, because not because we wanted to keep it so underground because we thought we were super underground, but because that was really a comfortable space for us. And I think we enjoyed working at that level. Um, I don't recall conversations ever with any of my partners that said, "Yeah, let's film Molson Park." You know what I mean? I don't remember ever having those conversations. Um,
Do you
I think
think
it was just about.
that was just in the back of your brain where you're like, I don't want it to go that large, or
I don't. I don't think that. I don't think that scale was there. I think it was really around continuing to throw really good jams in really interesting spaces, and we continued to do that until we didn't. Until we actually started running into real problems finding good spaces. So we ran the first party at Polson Avenue, 11 Polson. It was a scrappy little, I don't know, some kind of furniture demo room. And we went in there, we're like, yeah, this is going to be our space for Dreams and Goa 2. And we're like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a great space. Turned out that was really one of the most difficult spaces we ever did a party in. And then the fire department was there, and there was all kinds of really logistical problems that made that space difficult to work in. And that was really, I think, for me, the first space which said, man, we're running into problems here with the authorities, and being able to really just pick and choose the spaces. Like, I mean, we were kind of brats, right? We were total brats.
what was
We just
being
found a
said to
space,
you?
we'll do a party in it.
What was happening? Like, if the authorities turned up, or another
Ah,
extension of law, or municipal action, like a fire department, like what was being said to you? Why would they? Like, what was the excuse of the reason why the party shouldn't happen? Was there a general statement that was said to you? Was it different every time? Be like, were you walking up to these people and wondering, okay, what's going to be the bullshit today?
well, the police for the most part were actually pretty good with us, and they were really happy when we had security, and we ran the organization reasonably well with uh, the right steps and due process and the diligence around keeping the space safe and keeping it good for people. And most of the time, the police were rarely a problem. Police only ever became a real issue around, actually, when crystal meth started kicking in. And that's when they started, and the bikers started showing up. And then the pressure was really on the promoters to say, you either keep your space clean of this, or you're going to have a problem. And so a lot of promoters at that time really steered very much against it, even had like the no crystal logos on flyers. And there was a real effort. And by the way, there was a lot of pushback from those dealers and the bikers. There was a lot of pressure for all of us, phone calls, weird events. Yeah, it was a really weird time around that kind of stuff. And so the police were
Hold on.
actually,
Listen, I got that's like a explosion. Mike, are you saying that you
yeah.
guys were fielding phone calls from different people regarding substances that could have been traded at the events?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of pressure around, can we, stop, you know, grabbing and absconding with stuff that's being brought into events. So typically our door guys would,
Absconding.
you know what I mean? Like, or packaging and
Yeah.
giving back to the police, these things that were, you know, brought into the party at the door. And those kind of scenes were pretty crazy. And the authorities were pretty much at every event, and they worked directly with the security at those events to make sure that they had a really keen eye on it. And like I said, the cops were actually pretty good around that kind of topic, because there was a real, I think there was a real cooperation to realize that the level of harm that was kind of coming into the scene around things like crystal meth and whatnot was a big deal. And the age groups that were impacted by this was getting lower and lower too. And so cooperating on that level with the police kind of kept things going for a little bit longer. But the bigger issue was the spaces in the end, and capacity and fire regulations. And that's where, you know, it didn't take long before the fire department showed up. And then beyond that, the city actually just passed a mandate. You know, I can't remember what year it was, like 96 or 97, where they said, okay, raves are now illegal. You can't do it. And then, of course, there was the big jump up protest at City Hall to kind of keep things going. And I think you remember that. iDance, that's it. Yeah. And so, but that all happened in a short space of time. That, like, if you think about First Party 92, iDance was what, 2000?
2001, I think.
Something like that. That's that's 8 years. That's not a long time. And so much happened in between there. And so many different,
it's a generation,
so much complexity.
It's a full generation. There's tons. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You're gonna say something.
Yeah. Well.
No.
Did you guys think about doing something that was past the flyers? Were you ever in the train of thought to be like, let's get like an ad in TTC on the subway, or grab a billboard to try and compete with
that'd be so organized. That would be so smart, right? Yeah, we weren't that clever. You know, we were, and honestly, as we had kind of moved along with the work with Pleasure Force, I mean, Johnny was a DJ, and we were doing work together also with a label. So we had Dove House Recordings. Aaron was also a partner in that, Chameleon. And we were involved in doing label stuff on that side too. I was doing some management stuff for DJs also at the time. So we kind of had a different split. And I think all of us, the parties were a lot of fun. But they were also super challenging, and they weren't great money makers, right? Like, they were so much an event of passion, and they were a ton of work. Like, anyone who's ever thrown a party knows what that's like. And I think there was a real genuine interest, because all the people that I work with were genuinely interested in other aspects of the business too. So whether it's music or management, or some people wanted to own their own venue, maybe a club or maybe a bar or something like that. And so just throwing the big events was, I think by, let's say, 96, was starting to get kind of tiring. And I know Johnny was really heavily involved in getting and doing regular nights. I think he did some Pure at Limelight.
Limelight,
and some other nights.
Mega, just a mega.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was long running. And I started doing Milano's Liquid Funk, which lasted 7 years. I did that with the Vinyl Syndicate guys and Slip and Slide, and we ran that for 7 years. It was longer than I was doing Pleasure Force. That night was running, so that was a really good jam. And for me, I think for all of us, finding those different avenues and finding the sounds that really kind of inspired us and kept us going was probably a bigger objective than, as you just said, the subway signs, scaling this bad boy up. Let's see how big it can go. I think that might have potentially been a sparkle, but it certainly wasn't the end all be all. I think there was too much interest in the music and a wider spectrum of what the scene was. Because it's not just about the party. There's music. There's talent management. There's it, just socializing and being a part of a scene was really important, and so forth. And it's a complex business, or maybe move into other elements of it. Electronic music, as an example, spanned out to so many different things. So a lot of artists and producers, so they found themselves doing amazing music and scoring for movies. I mean, movies have now become a huge underpinning of electronic music and sounds and whatnot. So it found a new home in so many different abodes. There was a lot of opportunity. And for those who stuck with the big events, like the really big ones, the Velds and and Ryan's work in Destiny and whatnot, those guys really, really took the event to a different level, right? And that's a special focus and a special talent zone. I don't think anybody in Pleasure Force was up for that kind of gig. Maybe we were too lazy. I'm not
was
sure.
Was it that, or did you feel like you were part of a party collective and you guys were throwing parties that you wanted to party at?
Yes.
Did you?
Oh yeah. No, you know what, the ones we threw, I don't think anybody threw a party we didn't want to be at, ever. Right. And I think as soon as maybe they weren't that kind of party, that we were uninspired, and maybe combine that with just some potentially inherent laziness and or ADD, and our attention shifted to something else. And I think in the long run, that's really where it came to. It's I would say that's a really good analysis, Josh. Yes, absolutely. We did parties we wanted to go to, and a few other thousand people came along, and it was a lot of fun. And sending. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit of theater, a little bit of definitely theatrics, and building that community and the conversation that came along with it was part of it, for sure.
Alongside the camaraderie and the adventures, trying to stage this stuff and get it set up to full realization, actuality, where it became tangible, as much as a party could be tangible. Do you remember a certain instance of where you were going after a venue that you and the team wanted to host for a Pleasure Force event? Do you remember a certain instance where you were meeting up with a landlord who just did not understand what you guys were trying to do?
Oh, yeah. Au contraire. You know what? They were actually quite savvy, and especially Eastern Avenue. So, I mean, we had a very strong relationship with the guys that were running these spaces, and they were very interesting people, very novel, had been around the block. There was no fooling guys like that. They knew what we were up to, and we were super young, and they were just like, no, for the most part, people that, you know what, there was nobody that we snuck it through. There was nobody that we thought, okay, well, we're way smarter than that guy. He's not going to know. And so our best relationships.
You never pulled the music video shoot, or you guys didn't have a story. You were like, we want to throw a rave. We want a rave to be right here. That's what we want. We want to run this place from like 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. I want you to stay clear of it. And here's the keys when we're done.
Yeah, and especially down at the CineSpace locations down on Eastern Avenue.
Man, those warehouses were amazing.
They were phenomenal. Are you kidding me?
Amazing. Ah,
Nothing will ever beat those spaces. Those were off absolutely unreal. Um, they were priceless, and there were so many different shapes and sizes. I mean, you could do a party in one side of it one week and take over the other one the next week if you wanted to, and it would be a whole new experience. And yeah, those were magical, freaking magical. And the great thing is they were pretty clean. They were safe because they were movie studios. And this was the same guy, by the way, that let us use that space in Kleinberg for Joker's High. And I don't know if you're at that one,
yeah.
but Kleinberg was never the same. They passed an immediate bylaw to ban all rental of any spaces for musical events after that event.
What
That
happened to prompt that type of gesture?
Oh, I think the clogging of Highway 7 or whatever roadway goes through there for about 6 or 7 kilometers either way.
You mean the
Um,
traffic that was on the roadway was so intense for
yeah,
the party that the town itself was fucked over from it, or?
yeah, completely clogged, and the space itself was, oh my God, like that was just a bizarre event. So we had people at that event that
Is the
showed up from
municipality not
Vancouver.
into tax dollars? Were they just like fuck
Well,
revenue or
they didn't know what hit them. It
well
was just like unbelievable.
opportunity? It sounds like to me. I'm not quite sure what else they could have thought.
It was insane. So I mean, we had people show up from Vancouver at about 3 in the afternoon, and we still were setting up and kind of getting the whole place
To
hooked
what? To
up. And
party?
yeah. They were
So
showing.
how
They were
did this is what I'm
yeah
trying to get at. How did Vancouver humans know about what was happening over in Toronto, 6,000 kilometers away? I'm not sure. I'm guessing. I have no idea. I'm assuming.
absolutely. I think chat groups, Pound House,
So this
Hash
is it.
Rave. Yeah, yeah.
This is what I
Internet
was.
definitely helped. And we, there was a certain component of DJs traveling from Toronto to, let's say, West Coast traveling back to Toronto. So it was like communication, flyers exchanged hands. But internet was just, it was there already. It was in its early phase. IRC was very powerful at that point.
Mega.
Yeah,
I didn't realize it, I think, until about maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I wasn't on it myself. I didn't own a computer until 2006.
crazy. And you probably
It's
used that to produce some music.
right away.
Right.
But I didn't have enough money to buy all the programs, so all my early stuff is on GarageBand.
Oh, wow. That's
True.
crazy. That's
There's release
crazy.
I have releases on iTunes and Beatport right now that are from
GarageBand.
Garage. Yeah.
Nice work. By the way, if you were able to produce sellable tracks on that early version of GarageBand, you deserve a Grammy, dude. They should
I
they
mean,
should have they should have they should have music technology miracle workers, and you would be one of them.
I'm not quite sure I fit into any form of that category. I would say this is a lot of it I think is going back to what you were saying earlier in the show, where now technology is in a place of where it's made it absolutely accessible, perhaps even potentially a bit easy for people that know nothing about music, that you start with nothing and end up with something at the end of it. I'm not going to say it's a masterpiece or not, whatever it ends up being, but it is possible. It's possible to do. And so, I mean, I don't know. I'm obviously my most difficult critic, but I would also like to think that, have tools will do. It wasn't the tools I wanted, but it was the tools that I had, and the idea had to come out, and I wanted to get going, and I didn't want to. I just wanted to. I wanted to, so
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. So a lot, actually, a lot like the recipe for the ingredients, mechanical ingredients for this show. When I first started Utility Room, I didn't have a I didn't have a DJ setup. Like I didn't have a desk, and I didn't want to bring people into a studio room. I thought to myself,
Right.
it's a bit disconnecting. You have to be really into music on a mechanical and instrumental level to want to hang out with somebody in the studio. Otherwise, I think that maybe after a little bit of time, it's not that interesting. You know, maybe there's a caveat to that. I'm in my basement and my laundry machine is 6 feet away from me. You know, but it's a bit memeish and different, which I guess was maybe the novelty. But I didn't have a desk, so I had a closed drying rack, and
Right.
I had a thin piece of plywood, and I didn't have a webcam, so I had to use the cam that was off of my laptop. But I you know, which is it's okay quality, it's decent quality. I don't have a terrible laptop. I'm just saying that I didn't have all the I didn't have all the shit. I didn't have it.
Yeah.
So I was pulling together different materials from what I had around the house with tea lights and just different materials so I can try and jazz up the room to make it look like you know, it's fun. But clearly
Well, and I like what you've done with the pipe behind you. That's part of your heating, or is that that is,
yeah,
isn't it? Right
I
behind it.
that this is no stage.
That's keeping your family warm at night.
So the most staging that is actually, it's funny because I've got different things in areas of the room depending on how I position the camera, but I'm enjoying this space when I'm talking. And also I'm just enjoying this area of the room. I don't know why, but I feel like, so you know, the hot water tank is just over here, but I don't have it in view tonight, but it's been in a few episodes. If I move the camera just a little bit this way, then we've got the hot
You
water
know,
tank.
I feel it. I feel the warm. I feel the warmth from it already.
I've got a couple Burning Man patches that are up over here. I'm not quite sure if the black light's going to capture it.
Yep.
Maybe afterwards you can zoom and expand it. Don Burns is over here. This is a tag
Hey,
from his
Don.
last party, Dance into the Light, which was at the Opera House on May 30th, 2015. There's a UR painted on the wall, which
I was at that party. It was one of the last parties I was at before I moved back to Germany.
it's a big they asked me to play at it, and I think I was in another country and I couldn't do it, and I was crushed that I couldn't. It's still one of those things, but I have the tag here, you know. Obviously I think sometimes to myself what Don might have talked to me about if you would have seen me hanging out with everybody here in utility room, and what his opinions might have been.
Yeah, he
I
would have
think
been thrilled. I
I
had a
think it would have
good.
been cool with it.
I had a fascinating relationship with Don, and Don and I had worked on Nitrous 012, and then we had known each other for years after as people who had thrown parties in the same city together. And he's always not only was he a fascinating individual with a great sense of humor, but he genuinely loved music and was an ambassador of new sounds, an ambassador of alternative approaches to things, and was a supporter of anybody that was genuine and was trying to do something new and fresh. And that he was a very special guy. Very, very, very. I'll never forget Don. Yeah,
Such a
I would,
massive identity. It just in the
yeah,
city,
for
not and
sure.
I was fortunate to be a part of the ceremony where, you know, for when he passed.
Mhm.
I guess it was more of a celebration of life, uh, and it was interesting for me to learn at that moment that he had branched off into so many different areas of life. It wasn't. It felt like I knew Don and I knew how much he was passionate about music. And then I remember his passion starting for theater. But oh my God, he also had all this stuff that he was doing in radio. And then that's not all. There was this. And I get to the celebration of life and I'm bumping into different people and having conversations and realizing, you know, over the course of it that it felt like he did everything and he'd been everywhere and touched so many different people's lives in a unique way. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah,
I,
and put it this way, life is so short. Why not do that? Right? So why not embrace all of the possible? Why ever be strapped into the current, the norm. I think that's a pretty big deal. I think I've always lived that way. It's just go for what's different. Push the boundaries, and I think that's really key. And um, it's liberating. And I think someone like Don absolutely revered that kind of a lifestyle and uh, pursued new and fresh ideas wherever he could. Always. I mean, even just getting involved in the first party. I remember for Nitrous 012, like all the risks were there. Everything was random. My university buddy was supplying a space inside a building which he had the keys for a month, maybe 2 months, and it was just all wrong. You know what I mean? It was just like we sit down, we talk about it, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's really risky. Everything could go wrong. We don't even know if the power's on or whether it could get turned off. What does everyone think? Yeah, let's do it. And it's just like,
Yeah.
and you take it from there, and great things happen. I mean, really, really incredible things happen. It doesn't always work out that well, and for sure, when you roll the dice, sometimes the luck and fortune sometimes takes a different path. But for the most part, I think fortune favors the brave. Sounds
Did you
cliche,
feel
but
like I no, for sure it does. Did you feel like you were gambling? Did it feel like you were gambling when you were doing these parties?
totally. Absolutely. There was a huge amount of unknowns.
So
I mean, when you
the thrill that's associated with gambling, I mean, besides the promoting stuff and the
well,
visual of
wait, I think it's not so much gambling. It's the assessment and acceptance of risk. So not so much gambling because you actually know what's likely going to happen. So it's not so much a gamble. You're pretty sure how likely it is or not likely it is you're going to get in trouble. But when you post somebody at a hot dog stand at the corner of Carlton and Sherbourne, collecting cash for an event that's happening in a building a block away, you don't you know that that person, if 2,000 people show up with $20, might be potentially at risk for maybe carrying too much money that they shouldn't be at a hot dog cart. uh, you know what I mean? And those guys that are just, it doesn't make sense. It's not very prudent. It's a terrible idea. Like if you were to think about it later, you're like, that's a terrible idea. You shouldn't do that. But that happened. That was like one of many things that were just, who would ever have thought that parking 14 school buses in front of Union Station at 8 o'clock at night, um, to cart people off to a warehouse space somewhere in the city was going to be reasonable. It's incredibly unreasonable. It doesn't even make sense. We didn't even ask permission to pull the buses there. They just showed up. I'm sure people were like, why the fuck are there school buses showing up at 8 at night in front of Toronto's main train station? It doesn't make any sense. And combine that with 3,000 kids in funky, crazy outfits, standing in front of this venue. And honestly, it would have been shell shock. People would have been like, I have no idea what's going on. And they're getting on buses. And those buses are leaving. Yeah, all of that was completely uncharted territory. It was completely unknown. Nobody really understood why uh, that would be a risk or if there were any repercussions. I don't think anyone really cared. And after the first, like, it wasn't just one company. I mean, we did it, and lots of other companies did it, and then sometimes they would, when Union Station got tired, why not park the buses in front of City Hall? Which was the next event. Like, why not just go to City Hall? And that
Which
was
is
a
really
venue.
funny because you guys are doing almost shadow style operations on this stuff, but at the same time, when it comes time to make it actual, you're like, let's go right into the most obvious places and not hide
Totally.
anything at all. Be like, right here, in your face.
It was absurd. I mean, and that's part of what made it really magical at that time, I think. And for the most part, like I said, apart from a couple of really weird trends around substances, honestly, the police were pretty good. I think the fire department eventually came in because there was probably some genuine pressure around, okay, it's only a matter of time before something happens in one of these warehouse spaces that could be, tragic. And God knows we saw that in other cities in the world, like California and San Francisco. There's just immense tragedies happen in some of these spaces. Luckily, we did not have that in Toronto. We were so lucky. Like, we didn't have events that were disastrously tragic. Was the fire department right in being cautious around those spaces? Absolutely. If it was your kid in those spaces, you'd be like, yeah, I'd rather know that there's somebody keeping an eye on venues that are potentially unsafe. Now, Eastern Avenue, that was not unsafe. That was designed to raise the roof. And that's really exciting because some of those venues were literally, if you weren't shooting movies in them, might as well pack it with 5,000 ravers and just turn the knob up, because that honestly that's magical. And you can't replace that stuff. I don't even know if you can, like, sure, you could put people into, let's say, a stadium today and do the same thing. Or I think if you had a festival, you could definitely create a good vibe, but nothing beats packing that many people into a sweaty hot warehouse with a shitload of lasers, lights, moving trusses, and everything else. Nothing beat that. That was untouchable. Even really today, like, you just don't get that, and which is really interesting.
Supposedly, and I mean, I tend to agree. Maybe you might too. Hindsight is 2020. And whenever we look back at something, our vision is crystal clear. We're able to see exactly how it could have been, especially when we're thinking about stuff that might not have worked out the way that we wanted it to. And if you could go back to when you were doing Pleasure Force with the crew, was there something that you wish that maybe you might have done a little bit differently, that you felt that was an error? I'm not talking about obviously something that I don't want to. Personally, I don't want to hear a terrible story, unless you'd like to share a terrible story. But I guess just
I don't have a lot of terrible stories.
That's great. Perfect.
Yeah, some other events that happened, but they weren't really related specifically to Pleasure Force. But
even if it was a
but
comedic error, do you feel that there was something that maybe
oh
you're
man,
like, oh gosh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. That was a bad.
well, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, probably, like, if, yeah, yeah. So I mean, there was a situation. There was a situation at Joker's High in that party in Kleinburg, and we had, a lot of people coming in, and people from all over Canada, actually, in the U.S., especially northern parts of the U.S., coming into this event, and we, we tried to, like, chill out as much as possible, provide people as much freedoms as they could, and at some point, somebody had introduced a very strange acid into this party, like some kind of drug, and it was so bizarre, and had set off this very strange kind of cataclysmic event, that we had people that we were dealing with. Security, we had the best security, by the way. Sean Parsons and team were honestly, they were like our saviors. And Sean comes up to me at one point. He's like, Mike, there's something bad. There's bad things happening here. We've got some people that are really messed up. What are we gonna do? And I was like, I said, you just got to take care of them. I said, we got to figure this out. And so there was a bunch of individuals that had left. We sent out security guys to find everybody in the forest. And it was like, it's in the woods. And Sean's team fans out, finds everybody that's kind of like having trouble, brings them all back. And we get everybody. And everybody calms down. Everyone comes to a proper place. But we miss one person. And that person settles into the house of the caretaker of the space. And caretaker of the space is in bed. But the individual goes in and has a shower, puts on the house coat, kind of just gets dressed and get very comfortable in the home, and just makes himself at home. And we're wrapping up in the morning, finishing everything off, and we got a phone call. I get a phone call from the caretaker, and he's like, "Hi, yeah, one of your guests is in my living room." and thinks he's at home, and is so comfortable and so relaxed, but obviously having a really tough time. Anyways, we go in there, and first of all, the person that gets this person out and safely into a car and home in the end is Don Burns.
Oh shit.
And totally kind of eases him out. And the owner of the house is and I wouldn't say this is like a story of something in remorse or, oh, we should have done something different, but the scope of which just the scope and the kind of impact that these events had, and where something like somebody bringing in weird substances and setting some people off, there was a huge responsibility around that. And this person, in the end, was safe. They got home, and it created a story that none of us will ever forget, for a party that was off the rails. Dub Tribe, a 2-room venue, sick venue. Like, honestly, you can't find venues like that. You even if you're in a stadium or a festival, they're not the same. These are dirty, crazy sound stages. And we were so lucky to be able to use these spaces because they were acoustically solid, very safe, super hot and sweaty, by the way, like just not necessarily comfortable, but they were well built. They weren't a hazard. And we just managed to find these great venues. Anyways, back to this situation. The guy was safe in the end. I think I realized at that point that there's an impact to doing crazy parties in random spaces. And as fun as it is, and as random as it is, and as much freedom as it gives, there's always a price to be paid if something goes wrong. And I know that sounds like a sense of responsibility, which I hold to very loosely in my life. But I think that's when I realized
Okay.
we were very lucky and very blessed that we could do all of those great events and help build and carry a scene along in a way that was very special, and to not have something way worse happen. We were super lucky, not just as an organization, but as a scene. We were amazingly free in that period of time, and that is something that is very special to have been able to share. I don't think you could do that today. I'm not sure anyone can grab a space of that size today and throw an event like that.
I think you're right.
I just don't think it's feasible.
No.
And so
it could be. It would just probably be a lot more expensive than it was. in the past, because all of a sudden different people be coming out of the woodwork saying you need a permit for this and a license for that, and this is getting taxed. And
Yeah. So it happens in Berlin. In Berlin, there's all kinds of events happening in the woods. Berlin's an interesting urban environment with like lots of woods around it.
this is where
And
you're at right now. This is
yeah,
where
yeah,
you're an adventurer. You left Toronto, you came back to Toronto, and then you left again.
yeah. And I live here now. I mean, I've a long history with Berlin, starting with my parents. So I'm back here now, and it's home for me at this point. And both my kids are like doing kind of cool shit all over Europe, and being special and creative, and that's fun too. And so yeah, it provides a good canvas for creativity, and for them it makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Berlin's a cool city. You should come visit sometime. You'd love it.
I wish if we could have been in the same room doing this. I wonder, about that extra bit of magic, because it's so awesome just hanging out with you and hearing all of these stories, and knowing that, you know, none of us know how or what we're doing, and the impact that it might have down the line, our line. Pleasure Force was, I mean, firstly, cool name. Um, the parties were celebrated by us, the people that were buying the tickets, because we wanted to be at that party. We wanted to be there. Um, and here we are decades later having the discussion about exactly how important that was. And it was really important.
Crazy.
I'm not quite sure if you were into the early rave movies that were coming out. I think about some of the early rave movies, and I'm not actually quite sure if there's a rave movie that's really gotten it right. My favorite rave movie is 24-Hour Party People.
One of my
I,
favorites. Human Traffic's also up there.
that's number two for sure. And both films have raving in it, but are not really about raving. Um, the third movie that I would like to bring up is Groove. Um, and also, I'm not quite sure if that's a great movie, but it is definitely a. I'm not sure if it's about raving, but raving is a big part of the movie. I'm bringing it up because at the end of Groove, there's a moment where the promoter character interacts with one of the party people. It's the end of the party, and the promoter gets the nod. They look at each other. The party gives him the nod, like, yeah.
Right.
And he gives him the nod back, and then they go their separate ways. The reason why the scene is really important is because earlier in the scene, the promoter character is talking to another character in the film, and saying why he does it. And he goes on to, it's not super long and extra expansive, but essentially what he does say at the end of it is, I do it for the nod. What is this nod? Did you ever think that there was a nod? Were you expecting the nod?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the nod is what does keep you going. You look at the people. So there's many different phases of a promoter throwing an event like this. There's the thrill of constructing it and piecing together what you think will be something unique and different. There's the thrill of assembling some semblance of a promotional plan or business plan to try to make it work. Something, you know, varying levels of success at. Um, but yeah, so promoting and getting people hyped about something is really important. There's the logistical piece of working with the right people to put the event together and have something that is of the quality that you're looking for. And then there's that nod, the nod of the people coming in and knowing how excited they are to be a part of what's about to happen on a given night. And that nod and this and actually seeing people, whether they're giving their ticket in that they bought maybe a couple weeks before, or whether they're putting their $20 in and just raising their kind of hands in the air and like, yes, I'm going in. And you know that they are prepared to create a world for themselves for the next 12 hours. Um, that's very special. And that you're providing, again, a venue, a canvas for people to enjoy their evening in whatever way they like to enjoy it. And you know what? Most people enjoy it in their own way. You know, whether it's in one room or the other, one music genre or the other. And we had a lot of one room parties, but we also evolved into the multi-room parties as the genres kind of split out a little bit. And you could actually see those scenes break out. But that nod happened all the way through. So whether, like I said, from building the idea to working with the right people, everybody knew they were part of something fun, right to the punter coming in, nodding, and then of course at the final end of the night, for the most part, you know, very, very happy people. Like people would leave, and of course the whole nature of the after party. Not only would they leave, but they go to another party just to celebrate leaving the first party,
Is that
right?
is
And
that what? That's amazing. I've never heard it, put together just like that. Is that what it is? Is after parties the celebration of the original party? Your part?
totally, totally.
Fucking
It's
great,
like
man.
it's like a graduation party from
That's
a big event,
amazing.
and then it's like, hey,
A
we graduated from
graduation
that
party.
event.
Oh my gosh. No, I mean, come on. Like,
That's totally what it is. I'm
yeah,
telling
yeah.
you, that's what it is.
I'm having like a wow moment right now. I just have never really had it. I guess you know what it was. I thought to myself, and this is ironic because I've definitely been to some great ones and sure have performed at them. But I always thought to myself, after parties were like, I didn't know what they were. I'm like, didn't you party? You got to party more. Or was the party not good enough? And and now it's hitting me right now that that is a total glass half full perspective. And yours is super great, and they need to adopt that. That's fantastic. Thank you.
They're absolutely postgraduate.
This is reality TV, and I like to think to myself as a nostalgic optimist. Yesterday was cool, and tomorrow's gonna be dope. And this has been, the craziest adventure that I could have ever imagined myself being a part of. And one of the bigger impacts personally that I've been feeling, especially lately, is how many different lives I've touched and how many people have also had uh I was about to say how many people have touched me and then like
That's fine too. You
that's
know
that's
what?
that's
You
not gonna
let it all out, man. Let it go.
that's
Let it
not
go.
gonna
Let's
sound
hear about it.
that's not gonna
If you
sound
got
great.
photos, pull them out. If you got photos, you can share them now. I know you got photos.
And so I'm saying that because I'm not sure, I in fact I couldn't possibly be the only one, Mike, to let you know what kind of incredible impact you've had uh, on the music scene here in Toronto, and that's only because I'm bringing that up just because that's my reach of awareness. I don't know what impacts you've had other places. I can only imagine, and I know, you know, we met before I'd touched a mixer, and being a raver and meeting people that are responsible for bringing you the action was a really big deal. I just know that our earliest interactions, you were always one of the coolest people that I could get together with and talk with, outside of the party. Most of our conversations happened at Ecstatic at the shop.
Yes. Yeah.
And I didn't know anything. I didn't know anybody. I came from a suburb. I I didn't have piercings or wild tattoos. I think I was probably wearing like a polo collared shirt or something. I guess I was just trying to find my way. And so right now, I want to give you the nod.
No. So
Yeah.
not what I was looking for. What? That's great.
Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. You know
Yeah.
what? It's been it's been an amazing conversation with you, and you're a special person, man. You know
Uh,
what?
Thank you.
Kudos to you for communicating, carrying on the conversation, and being brave enough to also expose yourself a little bit in these conversations. I think that that is a sign of someone who actually gives a shit and what likes to dive deep, and that's important. That's really exciting. And this is the kind of stuff that builds new scenes. It's the foundation of ideas, and that's or dropping stuff on the floor. One of the two. But
It's about as
yes,
real TV as real TV gets.
yeah. We've hit some serious drama here. By the way, am I hallucinating or is there a happy face right behind you? I've been looking at that for a while. Is there
Well,
a happy face there?
yes, of course
Or is
there is.
okay, okay.
Our roots are in acid.
You're gonna tell me that there's no happy face on your wall.
No, no. You're right here, right? If that's where you,
Okay, okay, good.
yeah, yeah.
I was getting momentarily worried.
No,
I
we
thought it was
cut
a
we.
flashback.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's. I mean, well, there's a bit of a flashback happening right now. I mean, Mike.
Uh,
I really want to thank you for jumping on the show, being
yeah,
with us.
happy to be
Be
here. So
I'm
so
not
much fun.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if I grabbed. Did I grab everything?
I don't know. Maybe we have to do another round. We haven't even gotten to the kind of crazy stuff yet.
So
We
that's
can do,
just it. I feel like we got up to a place, but then because I'm like, I mean, I'm not in a rush to escape. I feel like we've done so much big shit that I'm not quite sure what more could be absorbed. I've talked about this in the past on some other episodes where are you a podcast fan? Are you into podcasting?
I you know what? In theory, yes.
Okay.
Have I done my own podcast? No. Do I like podcasts? I think they're really cool. Do I watch many of them? No.
Okay.
Should I watch more? Yes.
I'm bringing it up because even on I mean on any level, just sitting down and watching something, there is a form of fatigue that kicks in, and sometimes if I'm watching something, there's just too much information. It creates a form of exhaustion where I'm like, I'm going to end it. Like I can see there's a Joe Rogan episode with Kanye West, and I think it's just north of 3 hours. I haven't
Oh,
I haven't been able to finish it. I don't know what happens at the end of it or where it goes, but I want to. It's just that there's so
maybe you
much.
don't want to.
I mean I do. It's just there's the time thing. Listen, I am a super huge mega nerd comic book human, and today is the Zack Snyder Justice League movie. I don't know if you know about it or not. I think you kind of got to be hiding under a rock on the internet if you don't know about it. And I had it's 4 hours 5 minutes long. I've had to pause it twice, and I think there's still 2 hours
Good
left.
God.
It's just because there's I'm all I maybe it's just like I like to keep moving. And so the beauty of my headset now, these Bluetooth buds, man, they've changed things. Like I'm mobile, I'm out there.
Yeah.
I'm doing whatever I want, and I'm hands free, and so I've got the music going, or I've got the podcast going. Something's going, until it doesn't need to, and when it doesn't need to, if I'm sitting still, then I've only got, I guess I'm recharging, and my energy builds back up, and I got to get back going again. Maybe this is ADHD. I'm not sure. Just I think 2 hours. Then after 2 hours, I'm like, woo, break, a
Yeah,
bathroom
it's too
break.
much. Too much.
It's
You know what? This is and this to me. like, by the way, these bad boys, I don't know. There's only so much you can have these things stuck in your ears before they get a little bit weird
There
too.
is
I
there is
like
a
the
fatigue.
freedom, but you got to get them out of your ears at some point.
Yeah, there is a fatigue
Totally agree.
that does end up happening. Is there? Listen, again, thank you so much for doing this with us. Is there any shouts, anything that a quick out there that you wanna give for people that might be watching?
Oh man, that's a really tough one. I mean, I've been so out of touch with probably the general population, particularly maybe the audience that's watching this here. But man, shouts out to everybody who's still enjoying real music, who's still embracing the like a good spirit, and community. And guess what? When COVID's over, everyone gets back together, and this is going to be a hell of a party when this is done. And yeah, shout out to everybody for being strong during these times, and be kind to one another and love one another. And yeah, we'll see you on the other side.
I actually have. Thank you. I have one more question. Do you have video of the Pleasure Force parties? Do you have footage?
Oh, it's a number of actually a number of videos I posted already. I think one of them
In the
is
Facebook I've raved.
in YouTube realm. So if you look at Pleasure Force 9495, it's there. Check out the Communicator. They have a bunch of videos too. Dark Side videos are out there. What else is there? Yes, Looney Tunes videos out there too. So Looney Tunes, the one I talked about at the beginning, the video's there. Um, it doesn't capture the speaker stack that caught on fire, but that's for part two. Um, and and yeah, so there's actually a lot of videos. If you look on YouTube, look for ASEN Pleasure Force, look for 9495. That really good video by my good friend Thanos Gadnaitis, who is someone I'm still in contact with regularly. He's the guy that ran Eastern Avenue, by the way. And yeah, so check out those videos. Those are there. Some that I wish I had, like the Delight Show. No video for that. None. Nothing that I've ever seen or can track down. Lots of photographs, but nothing amazing there. And there is Renegades videos too. But I think the last time I saw footage from the Renegades party, which was, again, another topic for another time, doing parties with other new promoters. Cyrus Renegades and Lucky Spin Records from UK was a very special event too, and kind of transformed a genre into a style, for sure in Toronto, that became way more prominent than I think most styles out there, and that was the drum and bass scene. And a phenomenal kind of turn of events, and a set of companies that just spearheaded that whole sound in TO, making it literally the second home to jungle and drum and bass in the world.
Holy
sure.
shit. Okay, you're right. I do want to get into that. I mean, if you'll have me, I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, totally. There's a whole second round here for sure.
Okay, let's do it.
For sure. I'll book another one with you, buddy. I'd be happy to. You know what? It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
It's really fun. You're super smart.
Oh,
it's really great speaking with you. And yeah, I think congratulations to you for keeping this discussion going on, and keep reaching out.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. We're for sure gonna do it. Don't hang up. I am Jello and absolutely lucky to be talking with this guy right here, Mr. Michael Stein. We are in the utility room. You are absolutely awesome sauce. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll talk and speak with you soon.